Hello, everyone. Jim Staley here with Passion for Truth Ministries, and this is my wife, Cheryl. And today we want to spend a couple of minutes with you and share with you the impact that a particular movie had on us and our family that we went to go see last night. Today is July 4th, and I don't think there could be a better day to discuss freedom than on Independence Day. But we're not talking about freedom of a country or even freedom of a particular people. We're talking about freedom of children. The movie in question that we're talking about is Sound of Freedom with Jim Caviezel. He's the original Jesus in The Passion for the Christ, a blockbuster hit years ago. And he is back and with great passion himself has spent an enormous amount of time going through and combing through child sex trafficking and wanted to bring that to the surface. It's based on a true story. And we want to talk about that today and share with you, first of all, that everyone should go see it. That's the bottom line that we're going to talk about. You need to go see this film. It's one of the most impactful films. I can think of Schindler's List being another film in my past that impacted me on this level. I believe every believer should go see this film. It is for older kids and above. There are a few curse words in it that make it real for sure. So you can't take your young kids to it, but this movie is powerful. And so let's talk about just really what this movie is all about. It starts off with a gentleman that is a special ops military person that works for the government. His name is Tim Ballard. And Tim Ballard is the original real actor or the real person in real life that did this, was so tired of just catching pedophiles but never actually saving children that he went on a mission and the government wouldn't let him, and he ended up quitting his job just to save these children, putting his own life at risk, leaving 6 children of his own at home. And with the full support of his wife, he went on this extraordinary mission to track down these child traffickers and save these children. Specifically, the movie focuses in on a young little girl and a little boy who they call Teddy Bear. And it's just tear shedding. It's gut wrenching and heart stopping. This movie will dive deep into your emotional system and make sure that your heart is beating in the right direction. But Cheryl, tell us how this movie affected you. Why are we doing this today?
This is not to give any spoiler alerts for the movie, just to start off saying that. This is just to really give our feelings of what impacted us in this movie to be able to share with you so that you can go see it. And so for me personally, having 6 daughters, and I hope I can get through this without crying, but having 6 daughters of my own, and I think every parent has the fear, of their kid. We're always trying to keep good track of our kids and make sure they're not in the wrong crowds, make sure they're not too far away from us when we're at big events or even small events. But just realizing that this can happen to anybody, to any parent, like the parental part in this movie of the father who just trusted that, he was doing something good for his kids and it turned on him. Just realizing as a parent that this could happen. We pray every day it won't happen to us, but it is a real thing going on in our country. There are 350,000 kids in our own country that go missing every year.
Yeah.
And 100,000 of them are estimated to be trafficked. And so that's just really scary numbers in the good old USA. So for me personally, this impacted me to keep my kids closer than I have. And to realize that, like, as believers, we are not doing our job. We are not bringing enough awareness to this topic.
Mm-hmm.
We are not praying enough for this to happen. We're not using our support, our finances to help the people that are willing to go into these dark places and make a difference. So for me, I'm just, in another world, I would love to go and rescue these kids myself. but it's just heart-wrenching to see what some of these little ones have gone through and not even understanding or realizing what they have to go through after they're rescued. We haven't even talked about that. There's not even much out there that I know of what do they do with these kids when they come out of being trafficked?
Yeah.
How are they helping them?
One of the most impactful parts of the movie is just the statistics that this is $150 billion a year industry. It's surpassing the drug industry, if you can believe that. Like, it is giving a run for the money of the drug industry in serious capacity. And here's why. Because they say, you can sell cocaine one time and make a buck, but you can sell a 6-year-old 5 times a day for 10 years.
It's unbelievable.
And it just is a horrible feeling. I remember one of the most impactful parts of the movie, without a doubt, is where Jim Caviezel, who's playing Tim Ballard, is the special ops agent, and they had just caught a child pedophile. And this pedophile had all kinds of videotapes of what he was doing to these children. And his job was to write a post-op brief, a report on what he sees in these videotapes. And he has to describe what he's seen in the videotape. And there's a close-up where they show a tear dripping down his face, falling down his face, because he emotionally cannot handle it anymore. He cannot take watching what they're doing to these children who are 6 and 7 and 8 years old on average. And they are selling these children out for multiple times a day for a decade.
Yeah, I think it's really important to let people know too that, because as a parent, like we're very careful about what we see, and we were a little bit, skeptical about, okay, how far are they going to go in this film? And it was really tastefully done.
Yeah,
like they really put the emphasis. I read about this actually on the internet. I'm like, yes, they did that. Where they put the emphasis more on like the close up of, like you were saying, Jim Caviezel's face and his eyes as they're not showing anything on the screen. They're literally showing like just the emotion of if you can imagine having to even try to watch something like that.
Yeah.
It just shows the pain in his eyes of like how difficult it was for him to have to even deal in a realm like this that's so evil. But I just want people to know that it's very clean from the standpoint of they don't exploit children. Like they don't show anything that's, in my opinion, something that could have been taken inappropriately or whatever. There is a few like
suggestive moments, but the movie is done so well. Yeah. It's so high level. This is an A-class movie, in my opinion.
It's not cheesy
This is not a cheesy movie. Yeah. This is not the typical, Pure Flex cheesy movie sometimes.
Well, be nice.
Although there's some great movies on Pure Flex. Yeah. But you guys know what I mean. This is not the typical, Christian cheesy movie. This is high level with phenomenal acting and very realistic scenarios.
And as a matter of fact, it was produced, I'm not sure through whom, but they sold it to Fox, right? And then Disney bought Fox out, and Disney basically shelved it.
Yeah.
And they don't know exactly why or if it was intentional. We believe it was most likely intentional, but
for sure.
It's interesting to note that just like all of the stuff that they went through to even get this movie to the box office is insane.
Yeah, what was its own story in itself, where Disney shelved this, and then they lost the rights to it. They had to buy back the rights. Millions of dollars were lost.
$5 million. Yeah. Thankfully, someone put up $5 million to buy the rights back from Disney, which this stupid.
It's just amazing what they've gone through. But the enemy did not want this to come forward. Yeah. And Hollywood elites didn't want this to come forward because they're involved with this. We know that there are Hollywood elites that behind closed doors are not elite just in their filmmaking, but they are doing elite things behind closed doors on private islands with children. And we all know what I'm talking about in the news. And so We want to not just encourage you to go see this movie, but we're actually, after a short break here in a minute, I'm going to bring my 16-year-old daughter up here on the platform and let her talk about how it impacted her, because teenagers need to see this movie. I want to show, not just to tell you that you need to go see this movie, but why, like what kind of character, what kind of ethics, where are we at in the sexualization of our children right now in the United States of America, and how you as parents can begin to mold and make the character of your children, of your teenagers, to where they don't fall victim to this sexualization. So in the second part of this interview, we're going to turn the conversation more from the Sound of Freedom movie and more into how do you prevent your own children from being impacted and influenced by today's society and being sexualized so much. What are the different components of that? We're going to talk deeply with my daughter Meleah on that. And I think that it will be eye-opening for you from her perspective, a young person's perspective, as much as a parent's perspective that's almost 50. Mm-hmm. So I don't like saying that out loud, actually. But in any case, I wanted to share this one last thing before we come back, is Tim Ballard worked at the border for, I believe, over a decade. And he says that at least 85,000 unaccompanied minors have shown up at the border, thousands of them. I've seen the CBP reports are under 5 years old. Thousands are under 5. Why is a 3-year-old showing up at the border? Well, I can tell you why, because they show up with a name, the name of a sponsor that they've been given by a trafficker. HHS gets the kids, and they, by law, have to call the number. So our government agencies call the number of this 3-year-old kid that has like a tag on of who his sponsors are. They know this child is being trafficked, but they're required by law to call call that number. So the person picks up and says, "Hi, we have Jose Gonzalez, Mr. George Smith," and Mr. George Smith says, "Yeah, that's my kid, whatever." And they used to actually fly down and have to pick the kid up, but not anymore. Our taxpayer dollars send the kid by plane or bus to the sponsor. No background check, no DNA, nothing. They deliver our kids directly to the child trafficker. Our taxpayer dollars are literally, for the first time in American history, going to facilitate the last leg of a child trafficking event. This is the seriousness of our border situation. That's why religion, politics, ethics, and our children all come together in this discussion. And he says that by far, the only compassionate border policy is border enforcement, including barriers and walls, because as emphasized in the Sound of Freedom, the walls and the barriers lead the children who are being hurt into that funnel of rescue. And you'll see when you go see the movie, that's how one of the children get rescued, is at the border, because they're required to funnel these children. They have to cross the border in these places. And when there are walls and gates in place. And so
they said the children pray for walls.
And the children pray for walls.
They're praying for walls because they know.
An open border means that they have no chance at freedom. That's how serious this is. And with hundreds of thousands of people crossing the border every single month, and thousands of them being children, we can be assured that this is open season for child trafficking here in the United States. And sad to say, like we said earlier, child trafficking is in the United States is the largest consumer of pedophilia and child trafficking in the world. And it's because we're sexualizing the children from when they're 5 years old, teaching them this socialism, a gay agenda, all the way up through high school, normalizing things that should not be normal at all. Matter of fact, the Bible calls it horrific. The Bible calls it blasphemy. Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed because of it. And today we are normalizing sin at a very high level. So how do we protect our children? What do we do about it? We'll find out when I talk to my daughter Meleah right after this. Was Jesus actually born on December 25th? Why do we celebrate Christmas on the winter solstice? And did the Catholic Church originally choose that date just because it was an existing pagan holiday to a Roman solar god? We're going to find out all of this and more as we travel back in time over 4,000 years ago
looking at Egyptian hieroglyphics, ancient Roman artifacts. We'll even dive into the writings of the early church fathers and Catholic bishops and find out what they have to say about the topic. We're going to get to the bottom of this, my friends. Let's put December 25th on trial and find out what the enemy is really trying to hide.
All right, everyone. Jim Staley here, Passion for Truth Ministries, and we are back today in the second part of this podcast with Meleah Staley, my 16-year-old daughter. Welcome, Meleah.
Hi.
First time on camera here in studio. We're glad to have you in our very first podcast. How exciting is that?
Super exciting.
She's super excited. All right, well, guys, we're going to talk about, we're going to continue our conversation about the movie Sound of Freedom, a powerful movie that radically impacted us as we went to go see it last night. We weren't really sure exactly what to expect. You know, when you go to a movie, they say it's a Christian movie, right? Like, you know, you're paying more than you should because you probably are not going to get what you expect. But this movie fulfilled all expectations. It was a movie about child sex trafficking, and specifically Jim Caviezel, who was the star, lead role in this movie of a special ops gentleman whose entire purpose and mission was to save these children. And he put his own children and family aside with the blessing of his wife to go on a mission to Colombia to save these children. And that's what this movie was about. So I know for her, you know, she came out, you know, honestly bawling, you know, because the impact of just the thought of losing one of her sisters and walking to her sister's room and having an empty bed there, which they beautifully show this exact type of scene in the movie that really grips you in the middle of your heart. But Meleah, let's move the topic a little bit. So first of all, you encourage teenagers to go see this. Why do you feel like kids your age should see this movie? Because it's kind of a deep movie. It's kind of an adult movie. Why should teenagers see this?
I think that just the fact that it impacted me so much would be really great for other kids to see it, because I know it would impact them. And I think also for a lot of teenagers that hate their siblings or that just really, you know, don't love them. Like, I think it would really be eye-opening to even have the thought that maybe they've never thought about of like, wow, what would I do in this situation? Like, how would I feel if my siblings like weren't there? Like, if I walked into a bedroom and like saw their room was empty, you know? And I think also it's really like a good thought to think, like, as, you know, young adults, teenagers, you know, that a lot of us, I know a lot of teenagers, like, don't think that modesty is a big deal, but I think that it really is, because, I don't know, this is kind of a hard, like, sensitive topic, but I was telling my parents after the movie that a lot of teenagers, you know, will kind of flaunt their bodies and stuff, like trying to get people's attention, but they don't realize that they're actually getting attention that they don't want from men too, like, and even encouraging these men to, you know, look at child stuff on the internet and stuff. And so I think it's really important and eye-opening to see that, like, all the stuff that could happen from doing that.
So from the very beginning of really life, you know, the sexualization of children from very, very young is causing young women your age. You know, you're a young woman now, you're moving into womanhood. And why do you think that so many of your peers, even Christians that go to church and people of every tribe and tongue across the globe, especially here in America, why do you feel like young girls feel like they have to show off their bodies and to wear this super tight clothing and they, you know, to take all these poses? You know, we went to a fireworks show last night, and there were two young girls in the back of this pickup truck. The fireworks show was behind them, and they were doing poses on Instagram and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. They never saw the fireworks show at all. They were just taking pictures of themselves in all these different angles. What is it inside of girls today that makes them feel like they have to do that? And why is that so important?
I don't know. I think a lot of it has to do with, like, parents too. Like, I think that especially fathers to daughters, like, I think if they're not giving them enough, like, love and, like, attention, you know, then they feel like they have to get that from somewhere else, which is, dating or whatever. I think, they just aren't told enough or have enough of that, like words of affirmation that, they're loved or they're pretty, like they're beautiful. Like my dad does that all the time, sometimes to the point where it's annoying. But no, like seriously, because when he was gone, like I felt like I had to do that too. Like I was always, trying to get guys' attention or, feeling like I have to act like everybody else because I didn't have that. I didn't have like, someone telling me I was beautiful all the time or like that fatherly figure in my life. So I think that can be a big part of the reason why girls act like that is because they're just not getting that at home. And so they look for it in the world and they look for it somewhere else.
So do you feel like, I feel like that part of the problem is identity, that young girls and guys today, they struggle in their identity, and where dads, our job is to implant and really like stamp their identity as who they are as young women, that their identity is found in Christ, and that from a young age is found through dad. Like that's our job, is that they go through us to Christ. That's how it works. That's how God set it up, right? We go through Christ to God, and God says, look, this is the pattern. You have to go through Yeshua, Jesus, right? So in the home, the children are supposed to ideally go through the father or the parent figure, but really a father needs to be there. And we represent Christ in the home. That's why it's so critical, Dad, that we maintain our integrity, our dignity, our morals, our ethics, our spirituality, that we're not hypocrites, because our kids are looking to God through us. And if they see hypocrisy, then they will simply find another mediator. And that mediator, I believe, is the makeup. It's the clothing. It's the world. That's the mediator for them to get what they're looking for to fulfill their heart deep down. And I believe that's why they do what they do. They're looking for satisfaction and to fill themselves up. And so modesty is not about prudeness. Modesty is not about, when we teach our kids modesty, it's not to, make them the odd person out. It's to show them that you're always advertising all the time. So if you really want a husband, there's two kinds of husbands that you can get, right? You can advertise the one who's looking on the outside, and he'll forever always be looking on the outside. Or you can advertise for the one that is looking for the gold, looking for the diamond in the rough. And he's not looking for the outside. He's looking for the inside. And so we try to train our kids that in the way that they should go, that if you want the best of the best, the Prince Charming husband, then you need to advertise what's on the inside. And you can't do that while advertising on the outside completely. So we're not talking about Amish here. Our children are still beautiful and they still look cute and they still dress up and everything, but we're not advertising the body in the process. And I think a lot, what you're saying, a lot of young girls feel like they have to do that because they're missing something at home.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what would you say to kind of close up here in the sexualizing of America's children, which is really causing this whole the gay agenda and the trans agenda, where these children are really confused because we're sexualizing them so young they don't even know who they are, and we're telling them that you can be anything and whatever you want to be. You want to be a kitty cat, you can be a kitty cat, right? You want to be a boy, you want to be the Hulk, Spider-Man, whatever you want to identify as. But God says, I want you to identify in me. So I want you to talk to young people today, and especially teenagers, and share your heart of what you feel is most important to be really, truly fulfilled and full of that shalom, that peace, that joy, like the fruit of the Spirit. Like, what does it take? What would you encourage them to do, even for some of them that don't have dads, that are doing their job? What's your encouragement to them?
So I think for young people today, I just don't think that, we need to be looking. I don't think we need to, have our minds focused on, the opposite sex, or like having a boyfriend or having a girlfriend. And I know it can be really hard because, especially for like, young girls out there that don't have dads, like they don't have a father figure in their life, like guiding them and telling them, what to do and stuff. I just think that the world really makes it seem like it's fine, and that's like the lie of the enemy, is that you need to have a boyfriend, like, you know, this is how people accept you, you know, if you act like this, if you look like this, you know, if you have a boyfriend, you know. And I think that is just so not how we should be. And I think that really something that really the only thing that we need to be focusing on at this age is the Lord and our relationship with the Lord, because I know so many people that will be like, oh, you know, like I have a friend that is dating this guy, and she's a Christian, but he's not a Christian. And she's like, well, maybe this is God just telling me, you know, that I can help him and like lead him to Christ. And I'm like, that's not how it's supposed to be. Like, we're supposed to really be focusing on like our relationship with the Lord and really building that firm foundation, because if we don't, then like if we get married and we just expect that we're going to be all spiritual when we're married, then like we're not, because we don't have all that time anymore to really develop that relationship with God that we need. And if we just spend all of our time focusing on like what we look like or like who likes us, then like we're not being who God wants us to be and living up to the full potential that he wants us to be at, because we're not giving him the time that he deserves. And I think that it really, really is important for the modesty aspect of it, because my friend told me once that when you dress a certain way and like flaunt your body, then it turns guys on. It turns on the sexual part of their brain. But if you dress modest and stuff, then they're going to look more at your personality than your actual body. And so I think that was really cool to me to think about that, because I'm like, wow, what do I want? Do I want a guy to look at my body, or do I want him to look at my personality and like who I am? And I think that's really important.
And not only that, I mean, don't you feel like that, you know, from the time that girls are like, you know, 12 years old till 18, they got 6 years there where all they talk about is boys, right? When you guys get together, like you've told me, like you're so tired of some of your old girlfriends that is all they talk about is boys. And that 6 years, they're not marrying any of those guys. So like all of that time is totally wasted. Like it's literally wasted of things that they could have done, developing giftings, talents, you know, developing their own personality. But they're spending all this time with guys that they're never going to spend time with, and then giving things away to those guys that are not their husband. So like, lastly, before we close here, why is it so important to follow Christ and to focus your life during this time period on keeping number one? Why is it so important at this stage to focus on Christ and not on the opposite sex?
Because I think that, one, you're never going to get the time again. Like, you're never going to be this young. Like, people always wish, like, oh, I wish I was young again. You know, I wish I wouldn't have done this. And I think that also, like, the giving yourself away, like, you can never get it back. Like, you can never get your first kiss back. You can never get, you know, the first time you held hands with somebody back, or, like, anything. And so stop feeling like you have to act a certain way or dress a certain way, because it really doesn't matter what other people think. Like, I've had to learn that too, is like now, like, I really could care less what all the guys think about me or what all the girls think about me, because if they're not going to accept me for who I am, then I don't need to be hanging out with them. And the only opinion that actually matters is what God thinks about us. And one thing that my dad has told me before is you become the average of the 5 people that you hang around. So surround yourself with good, godly influences, because I know a lot of people that will say, like, oh, these are my family, like, my parents don't support me, so, like, my friends do, and I know they do bad things, but I don't do those bad things. But if you're hanging out with them and they're sinning and you're not saying anything and you're not doing anything about it, then you're basically sinning with them. And so I'd really want to encourage you guys to be a leader and stand up for what's right and do what you know is right, because, and like, what would Jesus do? Like, that's a real thing. Like, in the moment, think about like what you would do if Jesus was there, and like how you would act if he was around, because he is around. And so I just wanted to encourage you guys to just stand up for what you believe in and hang out with good people. And if you're hanging out with people that you're not supposed to be hanging out with, like, just don't hang out with them. And I know that's really hard to do, easier said than done, but God will bless you for that. And pray for friends, pray for good, godly friends, because I did. I didn't have hardly any friends. I felt like I was all alone. I just really wanted a best friend. And so one night I was crying in my room. I just like really begged God to give me a really good friend, a really godly friend. And I listed out all these things that I wanted in a friend. And not even a month later, I met my best friend, and she's literally everything that I prayed for. She's inspired me so much. I've like grown so much closer to the Father because of her. And so I just want to encourage you to pray and ask the Father to bring you those friends, because he will. Because in the Bible it says, ask and you will receive, and knock and the door will be opened. And it's true. Like, we don't even realize how real those things are. And so I just wanted to say that.
No, that's a really good word. And I'll just dovetail on that like birds of the same feather flock together, right? Like, we put off certain frequencies and we attract people based on the frequency that we're putting off. So many of you young people out there that like feel like, like you'd love to have a godly, friend, but you're hanging out with the wrong people and you're compromising in the process. You're telling everybody, including God, this is the frequency that you want. So you're going to attract the frequency that you're putting off. So if you are a trend setter, and we talk a lot about that in our family, be a trend setter. Don't be a follower, be a leader. Stand up for what you believe. And what you'll find out is there's other people out there that have that frequency that maybe don't have your courage or your stamina or the ability to stand up for what's right. But when they see someone do it, it encourages other people to do the same thing. And then you create a domino effect. And now the people in your youth group that are acting up and the spiritual bullies, as I like to call them, that are setting the wrong trend, they become the odd people out. And the godly young women and men begin to set a new trend that it's cool to follow God and do it right. We don't have to follow the world to be cool. The world's standard of cool is not God's standard of cool. It's called sin. It's called evil. It's called the sexualization of our entire community of young people, which is causing the child sex trafficking ring to continue and to grow. And so be a trendsetter, set the stage, be what God wants you to be, and you'll be literally qualifying for the very people that you want. And last but not least, what she said is important. Spend time with the Lord and ask him, write it out. What are you looking for? When you've got someone to lock arms with, adults, this goes for us too, because we can compromise as well. But when we surround ourselves with people that are strong or stronger than us, we become the average of the 5 people that we're around the most. So if you want to increase your spiritual level and you want to be more like Christ and you want to be the William Wallace in your world, then you need to be William Wallace for people to follow you and to have that best friend come. So to just kind of finish up everything, guys, we want to let you know that, first of all, we feel you as a family here at the Staley family, having raising 6 daughters. We have 4 left, and we know what the pressures are. We know what our kids are facing today in this over-sexualizing world, from movies to cartoons now. Even Disney is got a massive sexualing of our children agenda. I even saw a gay parade the other day on television that said, "We are queer, we are here, and we're coming for your children." They're telling you, the enemy is telling you exactly what they're going to do. They're coming for our children. So we need to educate our kids. We need to be the first ones to talk to our kids about these things and let them know what's going on, and then live it at home so that they can see that this stuff is real. And I believe that, me and her mom, Cheryl, are not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but we try not to be hypocrites. We live what we believe, and we believe that that is the strongest evidence and foundation that we can leave for our children. To stand on a firm foundation is for us parents to live what we believe behind closed doors. And so we want to encourage you at the end here, go see this movie, Sound of Freedom. It will impact you. It'll impact your family. It'll create conversations about all different kinds of things. From even my daughter had to ask me during the movie what a certain word meant. It opened up dialogue that we hadn't had before on that particular topic. And so I encourage you to go check it out. And the main reason is not even just for family. We need to support films like this, because in supporting this film, it will create content in the future that will do more, bring more content to the big screen on topics like this that really expose what the enemy's doing and point God's people to what we really should be doing inside our house and out. And so, again, my name is Jim Staley, Passion for Truth Ministries, my daughter Meleah Staley, and my wife Cheryl earlier. We are grateful to be a part of your life. If this podcast blessed you, would you please hit the like button or subscribe to our YouTube channel? And shoot us a line at info@passionfortruth.com. And if you would like to see more podcasts like this, please go to our website at passionfortruth.com and consider supporting us financially on a monthly basis, even if it's just a small amount, to allow us to be able to expand our influence into other nations and other languages. We are grateful to be part of your life. Thank you for letting us be in your living room tonight. Shalom.